The topic will be the power of employee engagement, strategies to drive motivation and productivity. The moderator for the session will be Mrs. Suchita Dantre, Country HR Head, Senior Director, Midland Credit Management and Encore Capital Group Company. Let me give a small brief about her. Ms. Suchita Dantre, a strategic change agent with 20 years of experience, excels in HR transformation, digital learning, culture change, talent management, and market analysis. She led initiatives driving innovation and growth at HT Media. The panelist for the panel discussion will be Ms. Charu Dewan, Director, Human Resource, Ayvens, Mr. Anil Tyagi, Director, HR, Kusum Group of Companies, Ms. Sonica Aron, CEO, Marching Sheep, Ms. Ritu Anand, Senior Director, HR Administration and Corporate Communications, Terumo, India Private Limited, Ms. Sakshi Bajaj, Head, Talent Management and Diversity and Inclusion, Compass Group India, Ms. Amrita Singh, Head HR, Denso 10, Minda. Last but not least with Ms. Swati Dash, Head HR-GDTC, India, McCain Foods. So with this, can we have our moderator over the stage along with our respectfully all our panelists so that we can discuss, as I mentioned before the topic, the power of employee engagement strategies to drive motivation and productivity. Thank you so much for understanding. So here, everybody, can we give them a huge round of applause as they have managed to be here and share their experiences, the insights, and productivity today here. Thank you so much. And to our moderator, Mrs. Suchita Dantre, ma'am, over to you.
Thank you, Deepika, and thank you everyone for having us. Dipanshi. I will not make the mistake of wrong name. Happens with me all the time. Yeah. All right, we'll start with a small story. An employee joins an organization day one. Second day into onboarding, the employee vanishes and doesn't turn up. And the recruiter is thinking, what happened? The recruiter reaches out after multiple calls being made to the employee. She's finally able to reach out to him. And she gets to know that the employee has had some medical emergency at home with his father. The recruiter keeps in touch with the employee, offers the insurance benefits, offers any facilities, any support that our facilities team could provide with hospitals or any other support. 3 weeks down the line, I get to meet the new hire batch and I see that employee once again. And I'm like, wow, I thought I saw you 3 weeks back. And the kind of response that I got from that person in terms of his motivation with the care that he got from the organization talks a lot about how will he go along in the organization and his journey, and his sheer motivation levels were different right on his day one once again. So whether we talk about really caring for an organization, that is one of our values, by the way, at Encore Capital, or we talk about developing talent within the organization. Renu talked about it in the first session today. I also take a lot of pride in talking about whenever we have lateral positions, roughly 45 to 50% of our position, we try and fill it internally and we facilitate talent development and growth for our people to fill in those roles. If we don't find the skill, we try and handhold our folks. So talking about talent acquisition, talent development, or the rewards, we take a lot of pride in having a president's honor, president club honor for our top performers, wherein the president hosts our top employees in terms of performance with their spouse or partner, all paid trip, fully sponsored by the company. These are some practices and structural stuff that we can talk about, right? The topic, as you would all guess, of course, and Dipanshi talked about, is about employee engagement. There are various ways an organization can really structurally or by experiences, engage employee. And today that is what we are going to discuss with this esteemed panel that I have. And you can look at the diversity also on the panel, which I'm so proud of today. It's generally the reverse. Anil, hope you're enjoying the discussion today. All right, with that, let's get started. And let's start with Ritu, right? Ritu, we'll talk about employee engagement and enough and more gets talked about it, but let's start with talking about where do you see employee engagement really driving the motivation and productivity and what is the importance of it?
Thank you so much, Suchita. A very, very good afternoon, everyone. First of all, speaking on the topic of engagement is almost like preaching to the choir here because of the audience that we have. So my intention today will be to share some of my learnings and some of the lessons of experience that I have learned working across geographies. And therefore, I would like to summarize some of my learnings across some of the categories. But before I do that, somewhere I do have a very fundamental belief that everything in this world can be replicated, right? So we can copy products, we can copy services, we can copy infrastructure, so on and so forth. But all of you guys will agree with me that there is one source of competitive advantage, and that happens to be our people. Now if that has to really form a very center point, engagement therefore becomes very, very important to us. All of us sitting in this room will actually hold engagement very, very close to our hearts, and therefore our own definition of engagement will be very different. But just connecting some of the dots and some of the experiences that I've had, to me, I think engagement is all about driving emotional connections and humane connections at work. It is really about building those connection-rich cultures, or else the term that I would really use is building intimate cultures. Now, as we look at some of the segments that I wanted to bring forward, first and foremost, importance of engagement we would find in really building very positive associate cultures and workplace cultures. All of us understand that the ultimate objective of any strategy at the end of the day is to yield a culture outcome. So if we have associates who would really feel connected to the larger purpose of the organization, who feel valued, who feel cared for, we have actually won the battle. The second aspect is really around building a culture wherein each and every associate is really able to build a legacy, make a difference. And that's where I would think that this whole connection to the larger purpose of the organization, instead of just looking at their traditional responsibilities, comes into play. At Terumo India, for example, we will call employees as associates. And we've also sort of termed, in fact coined a term called familial culture, because that is where our intent is always to make an outreach, not just to our associates, but also to their ecosystem, also embracing their families, and also embracing their pets, for example. The third segment is really around driving customer relationships. You all will agree with me that at the end of the day, our patients and our customers are really at the center of what we do. So if we have an engaged associate who's willing to walk an extra mile, who has that fire in the belly, who has the passion, such categories of associates will be walking an extra mile to understand that the dynamic and the changing needs of our customers. They will come forward with better solutions and ultimately drive a very seamless customer experience, advancing the mission and purpose of the organization. Lastly, just as all associates, the idea will be to create a team. The idea will be to really create a sense of shared commitment or shared responsibility to be able to take our aspirations forward. So in summary, I think as leaders, we need to be talking about the concept of intimacy a lot more, right? We all, when we are sitting and building strategies around driving humane connections and building humane connections, I think this concept of intimacy, right? The whole concept of understanding the individual needs or the personalized needs of associates becomes really important, and if done well, can really prove to be an enabler for the business. So,
lovely. I love the concept of intimacy. Beautiful. So employee engagement, like you rightly said, and I think in the previous panel, Bijendra was talking about how aspirations and motivators for people are varying, right? Great job, 4 promotions, right? And still the person's not happy. So it is very difficult, of course, to keep the engagement levels high. And therefore, intimacy is very important and personalization is very important. When emotions are involved, all the more a reason. On that note, when it is about, emotions and it is about engagement related, Charu, I'll come to you to ask, what do you think are the most effective ways in which organization can measure employee engagement, considering there's so much in it?
Okay, so Suchita and Ritu, thank you. That was good context setting. So if we all agree, and that's a given, that employee engagement has to be on the CEO's agenda, on the company scorecard, then obviously it needs to be measured. We've all learned this in our B schools. Our CEO at Ayvens is very clear about it. He quotes Deming, "In God we trust, all others please bring data." So at the end of the day, we must realize HR is really not, we are as much business as any other function is. It's not, we are not platitudes, we are not joys of motherhood statements, we are also data. So yes, engagement also needs to be measured, first. Second, as Ritu very clearly said, engagement is not easy, it's emotions. It's about respect, being valued, being cared for, being listened to, being guided, being, you see the softer elements, what we call the intangibles. So it's not easy to measure engagement. So there can be 2 approaches, theoretically. We can look at the means and we can look at the ends, and I'll talk about those in brief. Now, the first thing which comes to mind, all of us commonly understand, and I'll talk about it also, is the surveys. Surveys is simple, but in my opinion, extremely powerful tool if done right and if looked at rightly. And I stress on this part, if done right, and it can be a waste of money and time because there's no value you'll get out of it. So it needs to be really looked at carefully. But the reason they work is because they are well researched, they are empirically proven, they have benchmarkable data points, so which can give us, in a consistent manner, we can look at trends. So trends are more important than static data points. So when we're looking at engagement, we need to be careful of trends. So engagement surveys are the go-to tool. The only thing we should remember when designing, so it can work in a lot of situations. For example, companies, if we are just starting out, it's our intent to measure employee engagement, go to the surveys. If there has been a specific event, for example, at Ayvens, where I come from, we've just had an acquisition and an integration at the global level. Now, this is the time, as we are going through the integration, it's important, we really want to understand, get the sense check, of our employees. Are they happy? Is the integration working? Are they feeling at ease? Surveys is the go-to. We've all had COVID, we've seen that, when we were all distributed. Surveys was the go-to if we wanted to check in on the well-being. So surveys help. But just like I take a lot of analogies personally from the customer experiences area, when we look at employee engagement. So best way to do it is to really segment your population. Not everything works for everyone. It's not the one size fits all. So best is when we do surveys, think what we want to measure, look at your demographics. You can look by age. We talk about Gen Zs and the XYZs. What do they have to say? We can look at vintage, we can look at departments, we can look at locations. For example, does Bombay office think differently from the Gurgaon office, when we do that? We can look at gender, one of the very important things. Personally, I think those have huge insights we've got when we've really analyzed responses coming from the men colleagues versus the women colleagues. So engagement surveys can be really powerful. I'll come back on this topic once again. So this is one go-to. The other thing which we all, and I'm using common tools that we all have at our disposal. The other thing we must look at, and we do look at, I'm pretty sure, is the attrition data and the exit interviews. The exit interviews are, again, powerful insights. I'm a batch of 1990, so you can almost imagine I'm probably the most, I skew the average age of this panel as well. But I have exit interviews stuck in my head, which I had in my early 90s of my career. Still, I can almost feel that emotion today after decades also. That's the power of exit interviews. But look at attrition data. Specifically especially if they are not consistent. You might have some teams where the attritions are high. Look at that. The converse. Look at teams which are high performing, where they are overachieving. Understand exactly, insights, why are they overachieving? The converse of exit interviews, what we commonly, today's jargon we use, stay in career conversations. Again, a huge powerful tool. So I recollect in, of course, many years back, we had a very stellar sales colleague in the Bangalore office, and he resigned. And we thought he was one of our best guys, high potential people. And in the exit interview, he came out with this, he said 6 months back, we set up this office. We had 40 people in the office, and there was a collage which was put up, which had all the, moments of all the people who worked in that office. So there were pictures of those, and my picture was not on that. And that was the day I decided I don't matter, nobody even realized that I was the one who ran and set this up, and my picture was not on it. And that was the time I decided this is not the place for me. I wish I had the wisdom to do a stay-in conversation, and we wouldn't have lost one of our best people. So stay-in conversations also help, can go to. The other thing, and I talked about it, is I'm very fond of looking at customer data. So look at customer feedback. Look at the customer complaints that come. Are they telling us your phones are not picked up, your responses are too late, standard templates are given, nobody is taking the effort to really resolve our problems? We are all consumers in our world, and we have tons, and we've been seeing all the, this is where, it will give us clues of what is going wrong or what is happening, why are our people not able to, service our customers. As they say, happy employees make happy customers. So if customers are not happy, look at that. We can also look at data. Okay, I'm personally not a fan of looking at is, for example, years back, the engagement term started in 1990s, how we see it, I passed out that year. So the word engagement really caught on after that. And at that point, I remember initially having a conversation with a colleague who was the production manager of a shop floor, saying, for me, engagement is people come at 9 and they leave at 5:30, and they don't even stay, so they are not engaged. Now, that's an outdated concept, so don't look at that. This is not a measure of engagement. Maybe it was at some point, maybe it might work, but personally, in my opinion, don't look at that. Look at the general buzz of, how participative our people are. Are they taking the initiative? Are they calling out and saying, yes, I want to be a part of this project. I want to be part of this idea. I want to be a part of this cross-functional team. Are they giving referrals, when we have positions which we advertise internally? How many referrals come up? And not because they are paid, there's a referral reward, but genuinely they feel, this is the company I want my friends and families also to join. Look at that data point. Look at predictive and analytic tools. I'm a huge fan. I don't use them yet because the scale of the organization we're still not at that level. But I've seen some demos, and there's a lot of talent. We've been talking about it since morning. There are outside. I am a huge fan, and I think those really work. We are just about testing in our organization predictive analytic tools to check on the attrition data, and I'm very kicked about it. So I'm sure in the engagement space also that will work. Huge fan of that. Okay, since I happen to be a European, we are a European company, I've seen European colleagues of mine also measure sickness rate. Now in Europe, there is nothing called sick leave. You have just leave to have fun, and if you're sick, you just call in saying you're sick. So they look at sickness rate because that's a measure of engagement. It doesn't work for us in India because for us there is no separate sickness leave, so it just goes from the leave that we have. So figure out what works for you. You will find all the answers, to really understand what really, and it's the beauty of measuring engagement is there is no one score. There is no one go-to. Of course, the surveys will give us one go-to. We can have indices, we can have the NPS, for example. Now that's a go-to score, but that's the outcome. That's the, what is. The why it is happening and the how is it happening, you can only get when you look at all these aspects as a total and try and find your correlations and find your answers to the whys and the hows. So when we look at all of this, you'll realize, there are two phrases that we use typically in management, the leading indicators and the lagging indicators, right? always, if you're starting out, nothing wrong. Both are equally important. Both have their place. If you're just starting out, you're at the beginning of the maturity, then the lagging indicators are a good point to start with. But essentially, it's the leading indicators that will tell you where. So even in surveys, for example, the annual survey, according to me, is a lagging indicator. A leading indicator, a version of that would be a pulse survey. You know, that's the other thing. Even at Ayvens, we do this Friday pulse, which measures your happiness quotient. And I really, it brings a smile. It literally brings a smile when I see it. Just a 2-question survey. It's a very cutely made survey, and it just asks you to rate your happiness, and then you can say thank yous and appreciations, or you can say something you're not happy about, you know, which is in the public domain. So again, you don't have to be looking overkilling with surveys, you know, be mindful of that. People don't like it. But these will give you trends. Keep looking at it, and you'll figure out, you know, what works and what doesn't work for our system. You can even tailor make it depending on what you really want to be looking at. So if you want to be looking at empowerment, for example, that's a theme. You want to see how empowered your people are. You can look at, you know, how much do all decisions go to the MD, what is the decision making, what is the time we get, what is my authorization manual. Now these are all tools at our disposal completely. So the whole picture really comes up. And I would just summarize, you know, don't just end with all this. The crux is really to use the insights, which means it's only fair and logical that we go back to the people, our audience, you know, who've answered surveys, who've given feedback in feedback mechanisms, saying, this is what came out of it. Do you recognize this? Do you see this? And then create action points, involve them in action points, don't overwhelm them, 1 or 2 improvement, good enough, and then that circle continues. So build that credibility, otherwise, you know, as a function, we will tend to lose the credibility as well. Yeah?
Thank you. So Charu talked about various ways, like surveys, of course, data, another thing to measure employee engagement. I think one of the very important thing is, are people even participating in surveys? That itself talks about the engagement. But one of the biggest one is really communicating on a real-time basis. And talking about that, it's a two-way process, right? We are talking about listening to employees. How about how do we communicate as leaders and managers? So Anil, I'll come to you to ask this. What are the effective ways in which managers and leaders can communicate with people to drive employee engagement?
Thank you, Suchita. First of all, may I request my colleagues to give a huge round of applause for this panel. I think DEI is working in our country. So that's very important, and I'm very happy to be part of this panel. Now coming to the communication, I think communication is very, very important, and very important not only for employee engagement initiative, for any kind of initiatives. It is, as Suchita told about two-way communication. I will give you my own example, what I have done in my organization in relation to communication. So what we have done, the first and foremost things which we identified is you need to buy in the leadership. Your leadership has to be convinced about employee engagement and the benefits of the engagement activities. I think that is something is very, very important. So how we done, it is growing pharmaceutical industries. We launched Gallup survey like 2 years back. But before that, what we have done through third party agencies, we did lot of sensitization session for our leaders so that they get convinced and they understand what is the importance and benefits of this engagement activities. Otherwise, many a times it is like that, oh, this is one of other HR-KRA, they are completing it. So that was the first for me to create a buy-in acceptance and making some of them leaders for that process. So that is one through leadership, and that it has a cascading effect. Secondly, what we have done, we created open dialogue forum. When I say open dialogue forum, there we even rope in our managing directors. So we have like, as usual, we have town hall, coffee with HR, my team, my meet is a very unique initiatives. After doing that, convincing and buying from the leadership, we created this my team, my meet without just only facilitation and framework from HR. Otherwise, entire things is being managed by the line manager or the HODs. So it has worked very well. Second or third is like people connect. So as Suchita was also telling about, it's very important how you connect the people. So we have a digital space like, we are working on SAP success factors. So we organize an update, anything related to survey, and we create a lot of, like, any activities what you do in terms of employee engagement. We always create, like, survey. My PR team, my PR managers also is here, so that is the role of them, and then we get the feedback. Important part is what I understand in communication. After making your all communication strategies, depending upon your organization, how fast we recognize it and we take action on it, or we don't take action on it. Many times we create a lot of pulse survey, feedback survey and all that kind of, but then when you receive the feedback, what to do it? So what we have done right from town hall, which MD does, coffee with HR I does, we make, I do, we make, the action points and all that, and we communicate to the people. Even there are few points which is not actionable, that we communicate to the people. And now, like, how to, it is very difficult sometimes, employee engagement, how effective it is in your organization. So what we have done, we have created for major employee engagement initiatives, what we have certain dimensions, and on that we scale, measure the responses, and wherever we have a leg indicators, on that we, go back to the people and ask them, and like, do some kind of interventions, whatever it is. So that is how something which we are working. I am working in this 3 classification, but I still feel employee engagement is a continuous process. It is evolving, and I'm also here looking forward to know certain more means and ways how to do it. But one is very important, like when you make an effective communication, two-way communication, and timely communication. That's also, I think, very important. And create buy-in. Make your stakeholders, like for me, my clients, my employees, my employers. I think it effectively flourishes your engagement activities, and that will lead, not only that as Ritu told initially, emotional connection, and involved in your culture, and give better productivity and even a better workplace sensitivity. I think that is very important. When your employees start feeling that he is not here only to punch in and punch out, but he is emotionally and mentally connect to the organization, I think that's the best proposition, and that's the challenges always for all of us. So that is what I feel about creating a communication strategy is very, very important. And then again, it depends upon organization to organization.
Thank you, Anil. Two-way communication, effective to make it effective, timely communication to make it effective, personalized communication to make it effective. But to top it all, what I'm taking away is keep the leaders engaged, for them to keep the employees engaged, right? Talking about leadership and it being driven from the top, right? Employee engagement, of course, has to be driven from the top. And it's one of the major aspects of employee engagement is also about the environment that we create for people. Sonica, talking to you, how do you think organizations can create a positive work environment for people to thrive and foster employee engagement overall?
Right. Thank you so much. I think there's been such a wealth of knowledge and experience that's been shared so far. So before I add my own points, I want to ask all of you here, when an employee comes to office, or logs in, if it's a hybrid or a remote working environment, who do you think a team member or an employee interacts with the most? This is a question to the audience. Immediate supervisor and the team, isn't it? So it is actually, Charu spoke about how valued an employee feels, whether the employee feels heard or not, whether the employee feels my contribution is seen or not. It really depends on how have we built the capability of our people managers. It does not matter whether they are first-time managers, they are middle-level managers, they are managers of managers, or leadership. The point is that whether we are talking about the engagement story, or we are talking about culture, or we are talking about engagement surveys and changes after that, end of the day, the real heroes and heroines of the journey are your people managers, because everyday touch point with people happens with them. You might have the best policy, you might have the best R&R, but if the manager decides that in month 1, I am going to give the award to Charu, in the second month, I'm going to give it to Suchita, in the third month, I'm going to give it to Anil, and in the fourth month to Ritu, and then I'm going to come back to my first Charu. Then what is the purpose of the R&R? Then it is only on paper. My problem is that in today's world where we are all talking about constraints, budgets, time, this very important layer of making managers accountable and capable, enabling them to keep their people engaged. That is something that we are missing out on. When Suchita spoke of her example, she said, you know, this employee comes in, he joins, and within one day he has to take leave for personal reasons because of medical issues at home. Why is it that the recruiter is in touch with that person? Why is it that the manager is not in touch with that person? End of the day, when the employee comes back, whose productivity is going to get impacted when the employee comes back, joins the team? It's the manager. We as HR do not make managers equal partners in this. Engagement is not just the HR job. We can make frameworks. We can create what will work, what will not work. But look at the size of the HR team. What is the ratio going on these days? Right? It is not possible. Plus, look at the diversity within the team. But look at the span of control a manager has. A manager can create engagement for each and every person that manager is responsible for. The second thing that we need to understand is that today's workforce, see today, as of today, 52% of our workforce comprises of Gen Z and millennials. And this number is going to go up to 70% by 2025. Gone are the days when we wanted bulletproof managers, right? No chink in the armor, I cannot show vulnerability, I need to know it all. Today, the workforce wants approachable, humane managers. They want their managers to be their allies in their journey towards success. Now, are we even enabling, I have heard or I have seen, I'm a consultant, so I am not working for any one organization. I consult organizations, and my biggest issue is that people get made managers from an IC level to a manager, and they have no clue on how to deal with people issues, how to delegate, how to get work done, how to create other leaders. And this keeps on going on as they grow higher and higher, because the only focus is on technical skills. And that is where engagement breaks down, that is where motivation breaks down. Because people start believing it is so cut and dry, it is so ruthless, it is so transactional, that if I as a person am not valued, then I don't want to work here. A few days back, I was doing a session with an organization, and one of the participants shared with me that, I have an offer with a startup, but I am not going there for the simple reason, even though it's a huge a jump. The only reason that I'm not going there is that I have heard things about the managerial toxicity. I have heard things about not taking people and not giving them career paths. I have heard things about policies being there on paper. Don't get me wrong, they were GPTW certified. But even then, not wanting to join, right? What are we really getting it in, just to simplify, what are people feeling when they go to office? Do they feel a sense of belonging? Do they have a spring in their step? Do they really want to go and, what she spoke about, stretch, feel a sense of accountability? And I think investing in managers, when he spoke about communication strategy, great. Implement कौन करेगा? One-time town hall will happen with leadership. Who will cascade it month on month? Purpose-driven organization. Who will make it alive week on week, month on month, for the last spoke on the ground, for the last person on the ground who feels this is how my work contributes to the larger picture? It's the manager. So I think if we really want to make a culture of engagement, we need to invest in our managers.
Thanks, Sonica. Great perspective. Managers, I do feel, definitely play a huge role when we talk about creating an experience. And the culture as an employee experiences is first through the manager than anyone else. By the way, on the lighter note, in my example, the person was not even assigned the manager. It was day one of onboarding. But coming back to the experience, while we are talking about things becoming cut and dry, the absolute opposite to that is also leveraging technology, right? And while we want to make it all personalized and we want to have that feel and touch for the employee, we also want to leverage technology. Let's talk to Swati. Swati, how do you think technology can be leveraged for enhancing employee engagement?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here. I think it's great to hear from the bright minds and pick up on their wisdom, collective wisdom. So typically, I'm in McCain Foods. I recently joined, and I come from, my major experience has been with the service industry and typically into the technology side. So I have seen it all. And now I have come to a setup which is, obviously it's into the product side, and where I am asked to set up a technology center, so the Global Digital Technology Center of McCain Foods. So it starts from there for me, the technology angle. Essentially, I think all of us have been discussing about the employees in the system. I'll take a step back and probably I'll talk about the candidates who are our potential employees, and we need to look at how we need to build in the engagement right from the start. So for me, it starts while engaging with a candidate for a particular position in the organization, and that's where technology also plays in a very big role. How I'll explain. Many times these interviews, these discussions with the hiring managers, the person may not be sitting at the same location as the candidate is, and that's where we start leveraging technologies. Obviously, COVID has taught us how to widely use technologies for many other things, including engagement and the candidate interactions. So technology starts from there. Essentially, it's more important. I'm totally convinced with what she mentioned about making managers, people managers responsible and taking accountability of the people in the system. But actually, it should also start from right at the time the manager who's involved in the hiring process to make the person feel and talk about the company, the culture, how the company is, what is the company's vision, where is it progressing, how's the career landscape going to look like for the candidates. I think that's where the employee engagement starts, right at the time of hiring, before even the person has decided to join. I think that kind of excitement through these connect programs, obviously while leveraging technology, you are able to build in, I think then you are set the tone well. After that, I think the next step is once the offer is rolled out, obviously all those discussions have happened. There is a continuous engagement which we need, there is a notice period which an candidate has to serve before he or she is able to join the organization. The continuous engagement, there is always, we have seen a breakdown which happens. Once the offer is released, the recruiter's job is done, the hiring manager will keep waiting, maybe he or she will set up the systems before the person arrives in the organization, but that period, when the person is serving notice period, he's out, he's almost on his way out from the previous organization and is about to enter into a new organization. that's the time we should leverage a lot of technology in terms of, there are a lot of webinars, recorded programs. Maybe you cannot expose the person directly into your system server, but you can leverage many other techniques to engage with the person on a regular basis. I think that's very important. Why I'm saying this? Because right now we are doing a lot of that because we are hiring big time. And that's where I realized that to build that culture, I have to start from the beginning, and that's where technology is being leveraged quite a lot. It starts, again, when the candidate is about to join, many things about how the candidate is feeling, what is the pulse. You can use leverage. There are a lot of technology, a lot of artificial intelligence programs which are programmed to also detect whether the candidate is going to be a renege or whether the candidate is going to join us soon. So those are the points. I'm sure all of you have been reading a lot about these programs which are already there, but I think I will recommend that it should be leveraged more because you will already get, on the day one, you will get an engaged candidate turned employee into the system. If you are able to take care of that engagement, I think the other programs which all of my colleagues talked about will definitely set that tone. So from my perspective, I think there are many other programs in my head, but owing to looking at there is a timer in front of me which is ticking, that technology is ticking. So I need to give it to others, but I wanted to touch upon this specific point from the engagement perspective.
Appreciate that, Swati. Technology, of course, can touch upon every aspect of an employee, right from pre-hire till the exit, very rightly said. We are talking about technology. How does it leverage managers, let's say, in enhancing experiences and therefore the engagement levels? What about teams that are remotely working and distributed teams? Sakshi, I'll come to you. When we are talking about personalized touch, emotions, feelings, and then there are teams all over, right? How do we deal with that?
So thank you so much for the question and the opportunity here. Hello everyone, and I would absolutely first be very grateful to have all of you besides me. I think some really thoughtful things have been said. Charu, I'm sure I'm going to bug you for more information there. I think a lot of those were in my emerging trends list, but I'm so glad to see that you're already sort of, taking head start on that, and I'm not just head start, I think doing much more there. And everybody, I think Sonica, you really spoke about the manager's responsibility. I think we think that's like a small piece, but I think how impactful and effective it can be is really outstanding. And I think that's really what brings me to how engaging we are as an organization or as an industry to people who are distributed or work remotely for us. So Compass as an organization is very, very distributed. I think I'm hoping we touch, people's life, a lot of people's life here. Okay, we do, so I'm getting some of those thumbs ups. So we are a food services organization, world's largest food services organization, if I may say. And we're giving food and beverage solutions to a lot of Fortune 500 organizations. 90% of them, to quote the numbers, and I'm sure a lot of you will be touched by those services. Some of our challenges are that our people work in kitchens, in central kitchens, at client sites, in tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities. So it's very difficult to first tell people that, hey, if you're serving Google as a client, you aren't like a Google employee, right? It's Compass who's your employer. And while we've really crossed that bridge over the last few years and really had, established the brand and done all the work around it, I think what's really stayed with me in terms of engaging people across is how do you really not just do pulse surveys, which are equally important, or have like a great HR to employee ratio, again equally important. But I think what really created value was that how do you involve employees' personal life experiences? How do you sort of engage with that at a workplace? So if I may give an example, I have a colleague who runs ultra marathons. And he's done multiple of them. And we really look forward to him to be able to bring to a workplace much more than what, just like contribution to my agenda or his agenda and stuff like that. Like what he can teach us on endurance and stuff is beyond what any other program in the organization can probably teach me because he's lived it. And I'm or he can share good, bad, ugly things that I may go through when I pick up like a same path, or I want to like upskill myself on the same thing, or try something of a similar nature. I have a leader who very closely very closely, sort of preaches, or deeply preaches Buddhism. But the fact is that she brings a lot of insights to us through her reading and spirituality, which we may or may not believe in directly. But I think as an individual, I get the opportunity to be explored to it. And when I'm privy to it, I can choose to do what really works for me, right? Which in other ways I may not. And when I'm giving fancy examples, there are a lot of these examples, when you work with teams across. And how do you give them platforms to hear them out? And how do you then go back to them and make sure that it's not just what they do at work is important, but you also value what they're bringing from their personal lives back in? I think that really plays such an important role that we've been able to really have that camaraderie between the team when we say that it's one compass and, within the organization that's really worked for us. And I think that's really, really important. And of course, the whole frontline teams are, the ones that are getting the bread and butter for us, like our chefs, like our facilities team. And I think the programs that we do for workforce care in the frontline teams are very, very imperative. I think some of the studies show that 77% of teams are not really happy with the benefits that they really get in frontline workforces. And those benefits don't just extend to insurance and stuff like that, but also, through thick and thin, how are you standing with me? So we do a program, and I'm sure a lot of you all do such programs where you create a fund and so what we do is education for kids, marriage for siblings or kids if you are in a front line, because we understand what kind of expense it is. And again, touching an inflection point in their lives, in the personal lives, not just in professional ones, which makes them feel that, we value them as an employee much more than the 8, 9, 10 hours that they do with us on a given day. So I think such programs also really bring them very close emotionally to the organization. And you're able to touch a person's life who may be sitting in Chennai, Ludhiana, Jaipur, wherever. And it doesn't matter where they are. I think it's the emotion that really has to carry, to them. So
lovely. And with technology, work has intruded in people's life. Let's have life come to work as well. That is essentially what we are saying when we are talking about engaging people who are really distributed across the globe, why only in India. So enough and more talked about what we are doing. What do we need to do for future? I'll come to you, Amrita. What is it that the organizations need to do to be prepared for future generations entering the organization? And how do we prepare ourselves to keep those set of people also engaged? And how do we work towards it?
Okay, all of you, thank you. You've made my job very easy. So I'm just going to focus on a couple of key things, okay? I think Bijender in one of the earlier panels mentioned a story about how this young chap got getting 1.4 crores as CTC, still wanted more, was not happy. So imagine more of that workforce that you're going to be dealing with. I think what we are doing as organizations, sometimes we fall prey to very buzzwords that we see on LinkedIn and other organizations that are doing that. And somehow what happens is our whole employee engagement strategy is all over the place. Too many scattered things, too many initiatives, they're not talking to each other. So I think as a start point, we need to have a very comprehensive employee engagement strategy. And personally, last couple of years, I have been using this model that I prepared for my own self to look at initiative. It's called ICC. It's called intent, content, and contextualize, right? So intent, what is it that you're trying to build? Are you trying to build agility? Are you trying to build pride, belongingness, learnability? What is it? Please define that. Let people not get, be running amok with versatile and multiple strategies that we as HR people can do. Content, of course, you have to understand that this whole generation is very different. Many decades ago, we had something called attention span. It's no longer there. So capsule-sized, quick, agile, thinking on your feet, what are those initiatives that you can launch? Hyper-personalization is a trend.
I remember this example, my best friend's daughter, she's 10 years old. She has her name engraved on everything she owns. So imagine that person coming to the workforce. They are so used to customizations and being at the center of it all. Now you will have to offer them an a la carte of benefits. There is no one size fits all, right? Contextualize. We've been talking about surveys, we've been talking about multiple things. Of course, there are predictive insights, but please kind of work them around with qualitative insights. Please have your focus group discussion so that, again, like the employee engagement strategy has to be participative. It has to talk to people. Is that what they really want? And of course, career mobility. In fact, I represent Denso and Uno Minda. Uno Minda has a great legacy of building leaders. My business head, he started as a deputy manager in marketing, is now leading a business, 800 crores. The CEO started as a trainee. So those success stories have to be built in, and they have to be showcased, and they have to be kind of reaffirmed through everything that you do. That's all. Thank you.
Lovely. Great conversation today, I think, on... So we've talked about everything under the sun, hopefully. We've talked about technology, we've talked about rewards, we've talked about communication, effectiveness of it, open communication, managers' responsibility, how the organizations need to evolve, predictive indexes to be used. So great conversation, great insight. Thank you so very much, everyone. It was lovely. I hope we get more time to interact and exchange some best practices. Do we have time to take questions? We have? Oh, great. Wow, I'm happy. We can take questions. Happy to take questions, please. Anyone? Sure, provided we have at least one. I'm waiting for questions if anyone has. I swear, I know, this is the time. Yeah, great. Hi, please.
I'm pretty much audible that way. Thank you so much. It is such a pleasure to hear all of you out here. I think this is a major question, even with the entire HR fraternity. We have just gone through a lot when it comes to appraisals. I represent a very big organization that is Big Boy Toys. We are completely into high-end cars. And frontline is something which is one of the major aspects of our work operations. And the leaders are the ones who are actually leading it. Now, most of the frontliners have been having this question of engagements with their managers, which you rightly put in. They literally said this to us in the HR meetings. Ma'am, are you aware this guy doesn't even know my name? Now, I was so surprised to hear this. He talks to that individual regularly on phone, being a remote employee, and he would say, "Sale tune ye kaam kyun nahi kiya?" You get it? So, where do you see this human engagement to be actually added on to the work when it comes to the HR as a question while doing the appraisal of the individuals?
So, first and foremost, I think, see, again, appraisals is, to my mind, a business process and not an HR process, right? HR provides the framework, and then it needs to be implemented in letter and spirit by business, correct? Now, I think this feedback needs to be given by the manager's manager, that how can you not know your people, right? Also, is there an element or a percentage of behaviors, the right people management behaviors, are they given a weightage in your KRAs, in your manager's KRAs, or is it only functional or tech or numbers, right? These are a few things, and I cannot underscore the importance of two things here. One is the importance of building managerial capability across, and that will include the ability of giving constructive feedback. It will include the ability of building psychological safety. It will include building the ability of a common purpose that everyone is driving, and that nobody wins alone, and we are a team and we can only win together. If we do not build these three capabilities in managers, today what I see is that a lot of managers look at it like, अरे I'm here for 2 years, इसको मैं जीत लेता हूँ, इस stint को मैं जीत लेता हूँ, and then I move on. I need to prove everything that my predecessor did was useless, and I have to make a point. So I think there needs to be a shift in mindset, which we need to drive if we truly need to change what you just said. The second thing that we need to make managers understand is that human resources are humans. They are not machines. So when they come to work, they are a sum total of feelings. I mean, I met Suchita in the morning and I made the mistake of calling her Suchitra, and she immediately corrected me, right? We are all a sum total of feelings, emotions, and there are ways in which we want to be respected, we want to be addressed, we want to be valued. And until and unless I feel that way, I feel that sense of belonging, I will not be able to be my best. An employee, or rather a manager, can only succeed if the manager makes everybody in their teams succeed every day and be better versions of themselves every day. I think that is something that you need to drive.
I'll just add one more point to what Sonica said. To answer to your question, I think it is also a function of how evolved is the culture of the organization. I would totally agree with what Sonica said in terms of the manager's responsibility. At Encore, I am continuously working on creating an organization where people feel emotionally and psychologically safe. Can the employee have the audacity and the courage to really confront the leader and talk about it? Now that's the culture which is progressive culture, I would think that, we should all work towards creating. If an employee can actually talk about it, that this is something that I care for, right? So that's another thing. I mean, and of course, HR is not the only one, like she rightly said, it's the entire leadership that plays a huge role in creating that culture. And it's a two-way process, and it's a continuous journey.
Yeah, so we've actually given the workshop head the name as, don't become dictator. Become an individual who aspire to make people work.
Great,
thank you so much.
Great conversation. Should that be it? All right, thank you so much, folks. There is one more question, I'm sorry. In the interest of time, we can surely connect outside, whichever panel member you want to connect with. Thank you so much, everybody, and thank you so much here as well. Lovely conversation, thanks.
So everyone, can we give them a huge, huge round of applause? This panel discussion was yet interesting and insightful. Thank you all our panelists and our moderator for moderating this panel successfully. Please be with us for a moment. For our panelists and our moderator, I request Ms. Amrita Singh. Ma'am, would you please present a small token of appreciation on behalf of the entire team, as they have given their precious time today here.